And it's a wonderful, too hot sunny day. To begin with, just giving you a little bit of background why you need to know about documentary production. First of all, you might be from any expertise areas like journalism or public relations, or we might not be filmmakers or film critiques. Documentary helps us to navigate all throughout this kind of different disciplines, because documentary has newsreel. It has the tool. It uses those tools that we see in news, in any kind of archival footage usage, in finding truth, observing an action or a character or a situation or an event the way it is. Also, there is a new term since the last couple of years that has been in practice, which is hybrid documentary, that kind of reenacts, fictionalizes truth, but there is also an element of truth. So we'll see different kinds of examples. Doesn't matter where our expertise is, we all can share a little bit how we can use those tools and techniques in our areas of interest. Whether you are, as I said, how do we use those techniques in perhaps branding commercials or public relations, or you could be the future journalist. So how do we use those things, and what are the professional aspects and at the moment, at present in the market? We'll try to look at those stuff. But to begin with, I would like to know a little bit of your areas of interest. So you can use your devices. It could be your phone or laptop, anything that comforts you. And if you go there, before I begin the definition of documentary and the kind of categorizations, it might take you to this page. Are we all into this page? Or should I keep the QR code for a longer period of time? I guess not everyone could get it, right? Once you all say, yes, you got it. You got it? Cool. I'm switching back there. Is it this page where you all are? Perfect. So what is here? Different disciplines, and we all are in some way interested in audio-visual storytelling. Doesn't matter what you want to be in the future, right? You want to know how to tell a story through audio-visual techniques. Now, what I want to know from all of you is your interest field. Just write your names, that's it. Not a quiz, not a question. Just write your names. I'm interested in digital media. I'm interested in filmmaking. If none of these are, you think not useful for you, you can add this plus button. And you can add your field as well. If you think the options I gave, not enough. And if you think you fit into any of these, even if multiple, it's fine. I'm interested in public relations as well as digital media, as well as filmmaking, and all of it. That's also fine. Clear, guys?
Sean, if I click on filmmaking,
What does it show?
it says open post in new tab.
Yeah, if you click open, then perhaps you can type it. Can you type something? Okay, instruction change. Thank you for letting me know that. So if you cannot write on those posts, you can create your own posts by clicking this plus button. Just write your name. Is this plus? Now you can just write. Right. So click this plus button, write your name and choose your interest area. We all good? How many of you think your interest area doesn't exist in these options? Is there anyone here? Just want to have a look at it. Okay, all good? Perfect. So we have students from filmmaking, Wow, nice. Digital media. Public relations, journalism, sports media. Cool? Awesome. We'll get back here soon, by the way. Just wanted to have an idea so that we can see examples that is relevant to your interest. Because doc film is extremely, I would say, it's vast. You can take it to any turn. So how do we define documentary? The way theorists have already come across this kind of examples and definitions, definitely we try to capture reality as it is, by which scholars meant that it's not fictionalized, staged. Like, let's say you have a character who is a baseball sports person, and the person is actually that. It's not acting like a baseball sports person. Make sense? Yeah, so it's a real person you cast. The first very important thing, who's your subject, whom are you casting? It deals with issues of fact, of real events, of actuality. So it deals with these issues, but the way you do it, that might be reenactment. That might be fictionized. Fictionized in a way, you're going back to archives, you're going back to the past. Or maybe you are browsing the whole historical archives and trying to come up with a new narrative or new story. But it deals with facts. It's definitely, there's a conflict between fiction and documentary, because in fiction, people act. And here, kind of, you have the real social actors, we call it. The fiction, that's argumentative. Documentarian might say it. I'm more into fiction, so I won't say fiction lies, or rather, let's put it in this way: fiction lies to tell the truth, and documentary does the same. And from my personal point of view, nothing is real, actually. You know what I mean? Everything is the way you frame it. Nothing is real. It's all about subjective. It can never be objective. But documentary tries to be as objective as possible. Let's put it in that way. Fiction is definitely the director's or the writer's personal point of view. So that's the huge difference. It deals with truth, but documentary also could be propaganda, could be used for propaganda, could be used for during wars. There are various kinds of documentary that dealt with that. And the most famous definition of documentary by John Grierson is the creative treatment of actuality. So eventually they came up with other various documentary film definitions like, is it reality, is it subjective, or is it objective? But let's put it in this way, the creative treatment of actuality. So that's the John Grierson definition. And if we move on with this, the various styles of documentary films that historically we have seen. So in the beginning, for a few minutes, I'll just bore you a little bit with history. The first film, and also the first documentary, is Arrival of a Train. How many of you know about Arrival of a Train? Very few. So let's watch it. It's just a minute. The first time when people saw this in theater, they started running out of the theater. That's a very famous incident, like when it was screened, because as if the train is coming towards you. And first time when someone saw a motion picture. And that's the first documentary, as well as the first film is called this one, probably 1895, if I'm not wrong. 96, sorry, yeah. Let's see. That's it. That's it. And if you see other footages of this being screened in an auditorium and what's happened to the audience, that's another documentary. So you can make a doc on a doc as well. And that's very interesting because people started screaming that the train is coming as if towards them. So that's Lumiere Brothers, 1896, the first doc film, as well as the first film. A little, going down a little bit, after a couple of years, another renowned filmmaker and I really like Man with the Movie Camera. If you haven't watched, why I'm sharing this name, you must know this as a media student. The history of it. Dziga Vertov's Kino Eye concept. The concept of Kino Eye is camera can capture Kino as in K-I-N-O, you can see at the top with his name, Dziga Vertov, red, highlighted as a red color. So Vertov's philosophy was camera can capture what eyes cannot. Eyes are subjective. We have our prejudiced mindset, we have our previous ideologies. Now camera can break those ideologies. The way you capture truth or actuality. And that was the film Man with a Movie Camera. So camera has more power to the truth than our human eyes. That was his concept, and that's how he developed various films later on as well. But the most prominent one historically in the 20s was this. And the next, I'll show you an example now of a modern documentary film. I'll not bore you much with history. This is, before I play, just giving you a little background. So you can see during the Great Recession, if any of you are interested in future advertising agencies, for instance, which is a very big industry. So there was a doc on people who lost their jobs. The film is named Lemonade, it's a doc film. And it's a very interesting approach because all the characters are creatives. So you are making a film on the creatives, and I'll just show you the trailer of it. Then we'll talk about the techniques and tools as well.
It's not your work. And I was so... I got to work in the morning, 10 o'clock, phone call, and an email.
There was no sign that anything was coming. I was as busy as I would have been on any other day.
We were kind of joking about it nervously, but in the back of my mind, it's like it's a distinct possibility.
I mean, everybody knew layoffs were coming. The jobs that we got easily before were a little harder to come by. You just could feel it coming down. You could just feel everyone's assholes just tightening up.
Then I got this little, beep on my phone.
And the HR person came in with her hatchet and closed my door.
They're like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's time.
Yep, we're letting you go.
We can't keep you.
This isn't going to work out.
It's not you. It's not your work. And I was so pissed because I didn't see it coming.
It was a tough day.
If I wouldn't have seen the writing on the wall, reality for me would have been that I had to leave the country.
All I could eke out was, do you know where I could find a box?
I think deep down, it was sort of a liberating feeling.
Having left the ad agency world just gave me time to do other stuff in my life.
The day that I walked out, I walked into my own company.
I recognized something had changed in me.
I think a lot of people have this list of, if I could only do this.
Because I had so much time, I was able to take the painting really pretty seriously. You've got time to plan your daughter's wedding. You finally see your kids again. You eat 3 meals a day. I got laid off and I took my clothes off, posed nude in a bearskin rug, and started a website called mailcopyright.com.
I got laid off and I changed my gender.
I got laid off and I started doing my life's work.
My name is Curtis Glade, and I'm a documentary filmmaker.
My name is Bob Weeks, and I am a copy roaster.
I'm a holistic health counselor and yoga instructor.
My name's Kevin Carnes and I'm an artist.
I got laid off, and I'm finally doing something that I think matters.
So we just have seen a simple trailer, but a lot of things there in the trailer. First of all, the reason the first warm-up task in Padlet, where you have chosen your info still, we'll go back there. Before that, I just want to share, it's a beautiful story and a success story. It's a story on the Great Depression, but you see the way it is approached and the way each characters, when they were interviewing, they had their features with them. By features, I mean what they do. The filmmaker, you have seen the filmmaker with the camera. You have seen the coffee maker person with coffee roaster close shots. So it's not like only one person is there and you're interviewing the person, but also you're incorporating in the style of your making, the way the character evolves, so that it's more established, so that the action or the identity of the character is more established. And also we have seen photographs used in a documentary. In other documentaries, you may have seen news archives. There are various styles of telling your story, but it's a true story. But it's presented in a way that engages you. And the bottom line, as I said, we all want in our audiovisual stories, we just want to engage the audience, right? So let's talk about various styles that evolved through history. In the beginning, the style of travelogue, when people used to travel and capture different culture, and that's how one style emerged. Charles Sparks, 1911, newsreel, the birth of newsreel. That's British newsreel was the first birth of newsreel documentary films, where you would see how newsreels are used, whether during the wars or for other propaganda purposes, or to aware the public as well. So public relations use a lot of newsreel styles and techniques. And then archival. IU has archival footages, and if you ask for it, they will give it to you. And you can use them in your documentary. Let's say you're planning on something. Could be your neighbor, could be a dance club that you join every weekend, and you want to make a doc on them. And could be anything. Could be your pets, and you need some archives. Maybe you come across a concept that you want to trace back its history. And that helps. So if you just contact the library, they will send you plenty of options, whatever you want to look at. Cinema verite, I'm not talking much about it because the next class is on this. Chronicle of a Summer, the pioneer of this style, cinema verite. That film is a French film, and it's a French term as well, which also means truth. And how that film, now the truth is a very vague term, and we hardly can define truth, because everyone has different truth, and everyone sees truth differently. And how this film approached to portray, to capture truth in a cinematic style, in storytelling, and how human stories were told. We'll get there in the next class on Wednesday, and you'll watch the film as well. Hybrid doc is a very new term where we see fiction and non-fiction both all together. Experimentals are very poetic. If you guys are into poetry, and if you want to make a visual poetry film, and mostly experimental films, you would see it has mostly, let's say, the montage is very poetic, the way different jump cuts are juxtaposed. Various examples you can see if you're into visual poetry. Animation is a very new term that we can see nowadays in documentary films. I wish I could show you plenty of examples in one class. It's very tough, but just giving you the heads, the titles of it, and you can look up whatever is your interest. There are animation doc films too, where the same truth is animated. Now I'll show you a pretty interesting example. A very serious topic, but have a look at the tone of the doc film. Have anyone watched Fahrenheit? Any idea of it? Let's see. It has plenty of archival footages as well. So you'll see an example how it is used here.
You can make people do anything if they're afraid.
The FAA is taking the action to close all of the airports in the United States.
All commercial and airline traffic was grounded. But we had some airplanes authorized at the highest levels of our government to pick up Osama bin Laden's family members and transport them out of this country. In the middle of the war, corporations decided to hold a conference to figure out how much money could be made. Once that oil starts flowing, it's going to be lots of money. Whatever it costs, the government will pay you. It's going to be good for business, bad for the people. Congressman, trying to get members of Congress to get their kids to enlist in the Army and go over to Iraq.
The USA Patriot Act allows for searches of medical and financial records.
It gives law enforcement almost unlimited power. They wait till the middle of the night. It's printed in the middle of the night. How could Congress pass this Patriot Act without even reading it?
Sit down, my son. Well, we don't read most of the bills.
No one read it.
Members of Congress, this is Michael Moore. I would like to read to you the USA Patriot Act.
Let the eagles soar.
From the corridors of power
Congressman,
to the streets of small-town America to the front lines.
This is an impressive crowd, the haves and the have-mores. Some people call you the elite. I call you my base.
Comes the true story that will make your temperature rise.
So a true story that will make your temperature rise, and that's how the name Fahrenheit came up. So you can approach any story, whether it's historical or it's in your neighborhood, it's in the news archive, the way you see your story and the way you want to tell your story. That's what is important. Another example, which is kind of a different tone. The reason I'm showing this, I'll have a little task for you guys in Padlet, where you have to choose your own style, and I'll give you two options.
There is a mysterious ritual that dates back thousands of years. No living creature has survived, except the penguin.
These are all award-winning dog films.
They have wings, but cannot fly. They're birds that think they're fish. And every year, they embark on a nearly impossible journey to find a mate. For 20 days and 20 nights, the emperor penguin will march to a place so extreme, it supports no other life. In the harshest place on earth, love finds a way. This is the incredible true story of a family's journey to bring life into the world. March of the Penguins.
Isn't it interesting? So two different styles. One was historical, highly politically heated. Another example, very light, but story of success as well, and kind of a resilient nature portrayed in a very cute manner, right? So let's talk about how we can engage our audience, whatever visual storytelling or visual stories we want to say, we want to portray. What should be our story? So here are a few points, just things that we should keep in mind before we approach a documentary. So we want to document something. So what we want to document? What's the story? And it connects to this. A story usually have this 3-act structure. 3-act as in an introduction of the subject or the concept or the theme. So people know what we're talking about. Middle, we have a conflict. And the way you want to end the story, right? With 3 basic structures. You want to continue the conflict, or you have a solution that you're approaching. Could be anything. So the 3-act structure in a story. So whenever I think of a story, it's not about only the log line as in what we're seeing, but think of in this structure. Then it's easy it's going to be at least, it will help you. Otherwise, in documentary, most people face, from my experience, how will I end it? That's one of the challenges, because the end is not an end, because it's not a fiction, right? The story is continued. And we'll talk about documentary challenges later on. But let's see the way the engagement is exercised by the documentary filmmaker. Who is your casting? Whom are you casting? So in one film, we have seen mostly news archives and lots of characters. Public, political persons, right? In the Penguin one, the interesting treatment was in camera and music. A close shot of the penguins' feet, a wide shot of their marching. But the magic happened in music and cuts, in montage, the way it is assembled. And that's how the story was being told. The shots were pretty easy, but the film was very tough because whoever was making it had to continue the journey, had to go through the stormy days and all that, and had to survive as well. And with wildlife, the most problematic stuff is you gotta be patient and patient and patient. Sometimes it takes years and years, years. Because let's say you want a bird's flight and it's not happening the way you want. So you gotta wait the whole day for one shot, or maybe multiple days for one shot. That happens with wildlife, if you're interested in wildlife. So who is your casting? Who is your subject? Whom are you casting in your doc film? Think of it right now, even when I'm talking to you about this stuff. Whose voice are we listening to? Will you be speaking and introducing your subjects and characters, like an omniscient point of view or a third-person narrative? Or your subjects will speak like an interview? And depending on this voice treatment, next we'll talk about framing, compositions, the way you should use your camera and tools and lighting. It varies, right? The way depends on what kind of voices you want to portray and the way you want it. It's going to be only your subject's voice, or you will speak as well, or you as in the narrator. How will you make sure, cinematography and immersiveness, I would say they function together. Your camera treatment should not make audience feel that they're aloof. They're separated, right? They should feel they're right there. For example, in Fahrenheit, I don't know about you guys, but when I watched it, I felt like I was there. Right? I was there. Even with the penguins. I'm not there. But how it immersed the audience on screen, that you could feel those stormy days. And the happiness also when they are giving birth. So what are the signs? So 2 questions that I personally always ask. Why it's happening and how it's happening. That will answer all your questions and confusions and will help you perhaps to get your story done. The main thing in doc is editing. You may have filmed for 5 years. Definitely you're not going to put all the footages there, right? And the authoring is done. You write your doc film actually when you edit it. Before that, you have a brief outline and assumptions and hypothesis, which is a very contradictory style of fiction. In fiction, it's kind of like you have a shot list, you have a whole shooting schedule, all the shots are properly planned, storyboard is done, you draw kind of every shot, lighting positions, but in doc, it's not in your control. So some people enjoy this process, this uncertain, adventurous process of doc filmmaking. And if you think you're into it, and mostly in journalism, you must enjoy this uncertainty and adventurous journey because you don't know what your story will be unless you go to the film, and then there you find truth by investing yourself in the process. So now let's have a look at tiny few details like.
One of the better things that I decided to do in my
Bear with me with this advertisement for a while.
If, like me, you suffer in silence.
The first 2 decisions you want to make are how you frame the shot.
So if you haven't made a documentary yet, it's very basic and for them. What things you must keep in mind, let's say a very basic style is you're interviewing someone, right, in documentary.
and where the character's eyeline will be. Whatever choice is made, I'd recommend sticking to the same format for all the sit-down interviews in the film to preserve that overarching visual style we discussed earlier. The most traditional way to shoot an interview is by framing the subject in a medium shot or close-up, where the bottom of the frame sits around the waist or chest of the character, and the top of the frame includes a little bit of headroom. Usually the character will be placed either a bit more left of frame or right of frame, which opens up their body a little bit and creates some empty negative space on one side. The interviewer will then sit next to the camera with their head at around the same height as the lens. They will usually position themselves on the same side as the negative space, so if a character is placed on the left of frame with more empty space on the right of frame, then the interviewer will sit camera right, so that the eyeline of the subject, where they look when they talk, will be orientated towards the open space.
A very basic stuff, if you haven't made film yet. Now, even if you do it this way, what kind of blunders you might come across when you're actually in the field making the stuff? My suggestion would be, whatever your subject is, multiple characters, one character, make sure you have lots of B-rolls. You all know what is a B-roll? Cool. So let's say reaction shot of other person, if there is someone else as well here. If there is someone interviewing the person. Why? Because when someone is speaking without a script, may fumble a lot, right? Whatever you want will not be happening in the same way. Like, someone might do this, fix the hair, while talking. Impromptu has some drawbacks as well, because it's a natural expression, it's not scripted. The person is not an actor. So everything will not be visually pleasing. And that's why you keep backup to merge multiple shots. You cannot merge one interview shot with the other and without an inserts. And inserts are usually, let's say, close shots of other props. Insert news reels, you insert archival footages, or even on spot, the reaction shot of other persons, or if there is any prop or art direction on that particular set. So make sure that's the easiest way to start an interview. Now, before I jump into a little task, two interesting modern films. American doc filmmaker Ken Burns. I'll show you a short teaser of a Buffalo film, and the way that story is portrayed is very interesting. And this one is how a cat story is told. It's a new Netflix production. Let's start with Ken Burns.
My people in the Buffalo have a shared history together.
The buffalo was sacred, and they could not imagine existence without the buffalo.
They are put on this earth to help us survive. I think that...
I'll pause a little bit and talk as well, and I'll play again. So we have seen here archival still pictures. Very interesting way to juxtapose it. It's not a buffalo story, that means. There is a cultural discussion going on, right? There is a story of history and past as well.
Our greed and our industrialization would blink this thing out.
This is the buffalo's last chance.
They've survived, we've survived, we both persisted.
If you go to PBS sites, or lots of documentary films by Ken Burns are in PBS, but also Ken Burns has his own website from where I'm playing this one. So this is one style where you incorporate kind of a cultural and historical background. right? It's not only a story of the film, but also of the land and of the people there. Now, a very different style.
Forget everything you think you know about cats. A new generation of scientists is challenging preconceptions.
Cat research is definitely lagging behind the dog, but now we're seeing an explosion of cat science.
Genetics-wise, you basically have a wild animal living in your house.
Yes, they have their attitude, but if you want, you can teach a cat to do anything.
The saying is that cats always land on their feet. They first have to recognize where their body is in space, using a phenomenon known as the righting reflex.
Kristen has done extensive research on what cats want. She gives cats a choice, and more than half the time, they choose their people.
Cats in the Middle Ages were associated to witches, and they had cats to get rid of rodents. There came the time when the church tried to get rid of them.
Thankfully, even during these dark times, some people continue to nurture a bond with cats.
They seem to be able to insert frequencies that...
So you see, there are use of animations also in the documentary films, use of cartoons as well. You have a lot of freedom to exercise whatever interests you, whatever style you want to tell, and whatever actually justifies the story. Here, it perfectly fits this kind of style.
overlap with the frequencies that a human baby makes when it cries.
One benefit of whiskers, they tell the cat how small a hole she can fit through.
If you want your cat to like you, one of the very first things you can do is just slow blink.
Join us as we solve the mysteries of the cat.
And lots of slow motion shots. And the human you see mostly are experts, researchers. That has been the subject here. So now my question to all of you is, going back to Padlet, choose a subject that interests you, a character that interests you, and just write it. This is the subject, and I think I have a story for this subject. Take a minute, it's fine. Could be your friend, could be your grandfather, could be anyone. You have seen various styles. You can pick any style from whatever you have seen so far. Just one sentence, not more than that. I'm interested in telling a story about my pet, or my grandfather, or the dance company where I go for my weekends. Any story. And if you're into journalism and PR, you can have your different subjects as well. I want to investigate that incident. That's also documentary. If you're in public relations, I want to make a doc film that awares public on certain ideology, political effects, whatever. You already have your name, I'm assuming, so you don't have to create another box. You just have to write on your, wherever you are, you find out yourself, and you just write a few words, your interest topic. And I guess everyone will have something, even if you're in sports media, or even if you are a digital content creator. Whatever your field is, it's all about audiovisual storytelling. So what story you want to tell? But not a fiction. Any kind of creative treatment of actuality. We need 2 more minutes or we're done. 2 more minutes, fine? And would you guys mind if I just have a little conversation with you right now on whatever you have written? Just to get an idea how you are visualizing and thinking about it. Is it going to be an interview, or you're going to observe certain actions and incidents from a distance? Do you want to be a part of the documentary? That's also another side. So for instance, let's start with the culture of music festival. Please, go ahead, yeah.
I don't know, we're just interested in trees, so maybe like, I know it's a lot of like community, maybe showing that.
It's kind of like you will be observing
Yeah, and like interviewing people.
people as in organizers as well as people who visit there. Interesting. And will it be multiple festivals or one festival?
Maybe just one.
One? Do you have any plans to start with it soon?
This is hypothetical.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing. Interesting. The next. Family history. Please.
So a lot of my family history is pretty unknown, so I'd like to do a lot of personal research.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I think that would really help me better understand my own family. I can do a lot of interviews with distant family members.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would do. I would also probably find photographs and cut stills.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing. So, any plan to start?
Not in the present moment, maybe a couple years.
You guys know the best way is to start without preparation and just get on with it. It doesn't matter first time filmmaking, 10th time filmmaking, it's always terrible, the experience from a filmmaker's perspective. Always, even if it's a 28th production, you'll be the same person, nervous on set, tense, stressed. The story is going somewhere else and you haven't planned it that way. Things will go in different directions. But the one thing I can promise is, if you love it, doesn't matter where it goes. You'll enjoy the process, right? And just get on it. Because you wait and we wait for quite a long time, and then the story dies. You know? So the best thing is just start. A different content, let's say. Can we talk about this? Counterculture of the youth within conservative areas. Please.
I'm from Louisville, Indiana, which is relatively our experience. It's a very, very conservative Republican area.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a very dominant local underground metal scene. There's a lot of punk bands, hardcore bands, and we do photo documentary.
Interesting. And how do you plan to make the documentary? Like interviewing them?
Yeah, I'm actually friends with a lot of members of said bands, so I definitely want to interview them and maybe just walk through their daily lives and how they fight against systemic issues.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Let's see Converse shoes. Interested in the history of Converse shoes. Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, Converse shoes have been here for a while, and they also started to be used back in the day for a lot of baseball teams, and now you see that baseball teams don't use Converse shoes, but also the shoes I normally see on college students are Converse shoes, so it's staple in our culture.
Yeah.
And to see the evolution of what it was when everyone was using it for activities, fitness activities, and now it's more casual.
So your subjects will be people who are wearing or people who first, when you talk about history, so are you going to produce it as well as where the market distributed it was the purpose of it? Are you going there or only on subjects who are wearing it, users, consumers?
I would say both, because the history is also important.
Right.
To see how it's grown from being used in fitness and basketball, and then to being used for
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. And kind of like, as I can relate, so it has a production history as well. That's what you're trying to say? Yeah. And I would suggest Ziegler Watkov's A Man with a Movie Camera has this production process. So please.
The other thing, I don't know if you knew this, but Chuck Taylor, who invented the Chuck Taylor All-Star, developed it in Columbus, Indiana.
Oh, interesting.
So like, what is that, like 30 miles or something?
Yeah.
15 miles? So Chuck Taylor went to high school in Columbus, Indiana, developed the Converse All-Star, sold them out of his car and drove around with him. It is now the #1 selling shoe in the world ever. And it's not used for basketball.
Interesting. Yeah.
There you go. So do it. Go do it.
So what's your plan starting?
Yeah.
I'm asking this everywhere. Any plan or just?
I didn't have a plan. I just like thought of it right now.
Oh, pretty cool. Interesting idea. Thank you.
Now just drive over to Columbus.
Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go to public relations or advertising or sports media. Let's pick this one, Jason. Sports media. Oh, please.
I don't have anything specifically in mind, but I know I have like friends who they are related, someone who have cool stories.
Mm-hmm.
So digging into them would be interesting. Their dad did something cool,
Mm-hmm.
finding a story of that.
And the best way to start with, I don't know you have experience or not. Have you ever captured sports event?
Not like professional stuff, but on my phone.
Okay. But try it out. It's fascinating. The way you have seen the cat one, you have to use the same kind of, tele-lens because you are actually far from subject, and slow motions as well. You can play with times and motions too. And that would give you a different interest and kind of a visual appealing insert, even if you're having an interviews, like interviewing your friends or their parents who has a sports background. Also, if you capture sports events, that would be really interesting. And definitely that would give you access to historical archival photographs as well if you're planning. So that's cool. Public relations, media law and policy. Any idea? Oh, interesting.
Presentations of that in film, whether it's like ethics of it, or like like also concept of like team building and stuff like that is interesting. Just like especially like documentaries like what is real, it's like interesting. It's schizophrenia, maybe have different ideas of what reality maybe.
Oh, cool. Thank you for sharing. Just adding to your idea, and to all of you as well. There's another term called video essay. If you have heard of it, it's a kind of newly emerged style, video essay. So where, let's say, you want to talk about whether history or the effect, or you want to interview people, but also textual use with animation and graphics. You can tell your story as well, even if you're not filming right now. The main purpose is to be in the practice of storytelling, whether through text, through animations, motion graphics, if you are into After Effects, Premiere Pro, just use some text, use a background, use a still image. You don't have to shoot, not necessary if you don't have access to gears and gadgets, but how to tell a story, how to start it, and how to end it. That's important, and that's a practice. We never get it within a day and night. It's a continuous process. So all the ideas that you have shared, I would suggest you might not go for shooting right away, that's fine. Just make a video essay with text and animations. And now we have phones as well, right? Where you can play with motion graphics as well. So just come up with a storyline. And then someday develop the same thing to a doc film by adding interviews or observational sports events or music festivals. But if you don't start it, then actually you'll never start it. And that happens. Lots of stories died. that I didn't make in my undergrad. I guess it happens with everyone. I mean, we think of so many things when we are thinkers, but the more we grow up, life happens. So the next thing is, let's talk about challenges. So I would ask you, what if the conclusion is, how do you draw a conclusion? So you have shared certain topics. I don't want to put anyone on spot, but I would make it an open call. So whatever your story you have thought of, and particularly people with whom I didn't interact, please feel free to shout out. I want to see my story end in this way. I just want to know how you plan to conclude your story. If you don't voluntarily participate, I have to go to Padlet again. Anyone want to share something? I want to end my story in this way. You want me to go to Padlet?
Well, I think one easy one would be someone had like a community college sports team, like they win the championship, right? Like that's what you would want, but does that always happen?
And even if there are stories where, let's say your subject didn't win, and then what? How do you end the story? It's a great challenge. How do you conclude it? Any idea? We all have ideas like, I want to talk about this story. Have you thought of how do you want to end it? No volunteer participation? Okay, I have Padlet. That's how it's a backup, huh?
Sean, it's because everyone's story worked out perfectly in their own mind.
Oh, I mean, that's why I want to learn as well. Like, how do you come up with an ending in a doc film? It's tough. So let's say Morgan Griffith. Yes, I'm interested in sharing people's interesting stories. Would you like to share something about your story?
Basically, kind of my idea that was like, I'm kind of interested in like, if you listen to like your grandfather's like old stories and stuff, it's like tell them to like their grandchildren, like they're not that interested, but like I feel like it'd be cool to try to capture something like that, like someone telling a story of like their youth or even a family member.
Very good. And we have already experienced a little bit of everyone's story by listening to each other, but we still can sense it. It's difficult to end the story, to come up with a proper conclusion or a climax. Have you planned anything? How do you see your film that having a climatic effect?
I've not thought too much about like a climactic effect. I know I thought about it just like going around and just like finding people that would just like love to share just an interesting
That's cool.
story that they have.
Sometimes I do that as well. And I leave it on the audience. I mean, my subjects, my participants. And that's tough and challenging. But you gotta find, I mean, when you're making it, when you're in the process, I would suggest, think of the conclusion or the climax. Someone else that we haven't talked yet. Sophia Wilderman, interested topic, sex psychologists and researchers. Please.
Well, after like all of the stuff with the Kids Institute last semester, I really started digging into like, I found it interesting, like the careers of sex psychologists and researchers and what they do. But I guess in terms of like a documentary, I don't really know what story I'd be telling. It'd be more like telling their stories. So I don't really know how the story would end because I don't know their stories. So you like start thinking something like that.
Yeah. So what's your plan when you before you go to the doc field, like in the field of making a doc film?
I mean, I guess it would be mostly like interviews, and then it's probably just something that's like built as you gather information. Because in my head, I'm imagining it as like interviewing a bunch of different psychologists and researchers and learning like what they do, what they've done to like get to this level, controversies, because that is considered like a big controversy these days, that kind of thing.
Thank you so much. One idea that just popped up, if you all are planning to some sort of interviews in any way, then my suggestion would be about climax. Depends on your question. Think of a question that can be drawn as a final question, or that gives a feeling to the audience, a feeling of conclusion. Make sense what I'm saying? So it's there you have the control, because the question is in your hand. You'll ask the question, and depends on the response, you can end it right there. So think of questions. What if your story doesn't pan out? I haven't talked about it. So what if your story is not having an arc? You know what's a story arc? We seek as an audience a conflict, right? We seek as an audience something interesting in the story. Why would I watch this story? The story is an example that we have just seen, even if it's not our story. There was an arc. I mean, the penguin story, right? There was conflict, there was an introduction, the way they give birth, and there's such a story. And even the Lemonade, the PR agency, all employees got fired during the Great Depression, and they successfully made a career on their own later on, right? So how do you plan that story out? And what if it doesn't pan out? My suggestion would be keep yourself open. Change your story a little bit. Incorporate more characters. It happened with me this semester, the doc film I'm making. So it might not happen the way you plan always. Let's say you thought this would be an interesting subject, and you went to interview the person. And when the person shared the story, you're not getting the story arc. You might not get a climatic effect. And then what you do? And then the tough thing, you got to think about it more, incorporate more characters. That's one option. Go to news archives, history, newsreels, make the story visually appealing, have some graphic effects if you want, if that suits your story, or add more characters and interesting characters. Casting is really important, the way we do in fiction, right? In non-fiction, like in documentary film as well, casting is very important. Who is speaking to you and the way they speak. And it's a real casting, so you gotta fix really someone, or you have to tell the story of that someone in a very interesting way, an intriguing way. What we do in case of unusable footage in audio. Anyone experienced that ever? It happens. So for instance, I was filming one of the professors here at IU, and it was his office room because couldn't schedule other spaces. And then what happened, other people outside his office room, maybe were chit-chatting, were laughing out loud, and that noise was, so I could hear it, but I can't say anything. Like, it's their space. They allowed me for a few minutes to film it, and I cannot just say, I want silence in this zone. I cannot do that, right? And that was a bummer. That was one thing. About footage. How did I resolve it? We'll talk about it. And so just about footage, one incident is, if you have ever filmed in classroom, have you ever noticed light blink? These lights on camera, it's not the way you see with your eyes. It actually blinks like a frizzy, hazy blink, constant blink. In classroom lights, not your shooting lights. So if you don't use the shooting lights, and if it's an indoor, I always suggest double check your venue before you go for filming. This semester, the doc film that I'm making, before I went or scheduled my subjects for filming, I called upon all the crew members, and we had a gear testing in every location so that this kind of blunder doesn't happen. Because you don't know which space is how much. I mean, there is a sound also of this machine. And when you use audio, that will be captured. And when you use it in the post, it will be terrible. You might have a very good bite and you can't use it. And this sound is almost in every office room, every indoor building. Gotcha? So make sure of these noises and how you can resolve those issues. Because once it is done, it's a doc film. You cannot reshoot. It's done and it's done. Right? You cannot have, we'll shoot again. That's not going to happen. Copyright issues. You cannot just download the music and use it. That's violation. I mean, you guys already know about it. I'm sure about it. And IU has a copyright form as well. So if you do not know, you can download that form. IU also gives you access to copyright-free music or the copyright they bought. If you want to use music from there, like archival footages. So just be careful of these issues, of these challenges. And most importantly, when you are interviewing a subject, a story you're telling, make sure you sign a content release form. That person might say at that moment that I'm okay, whatever you do. But what if later on the person says, I object, you cannot screen it in PBS. I object, you cannot screen it at IU Cinema. That can happen. As a filmmaker, you're going to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. So you should take a form from the IU side. IU has a content release and this kind of copyright. And where it is written clearly, IU has the whole right to do anything with this one. And they have to sign it. So then you are safe. Make sense? The person might be your friend, but these are official formats. It's not only a formality, it's to save your content, the effort, the energy you invest in. Make sense? So these are a few challenges. How much time we have? Oh, we have crossed time, I guess, right? Oh no, we have time? 10 minutes. Oh, we have 10 minutes, yeah. I want to show you a little trailer of a film that this I'm making this semester. So I thought we can see a little dog style of Kukusania. It's an African American dance company. Let's see. I'll pause and talk about it. That's a better way to interact. So I decided not to use graphics for the title. So I thought I should take a shot. Was it scripted? No. Was it planned? No. I just thought this makes more sense, or a different treatment. Let's try it out. I mean, we can all do it in the post. Like, we can type or graphics, motion, whatever. So why not put the title like a real one? So it's, but one a bummer who I had. So you can see this shot. Some people didn't get it that it's a title. So I thought, okay, I'll write it. Yeah, sometimes the title is missing. What was the title of the film? I said, I'll write it. But I don't want to write the title. You know what I mean? So that's one style. Another feedback I got. And this screen is quite dark, but I don't know. So I edited a little bit by masking this one. I made it a little darker so that the focus goes here, so that you can read a bit. Otherwise, it was a daylight, you can see, so it was quite bright. So the title doesn't stand out. That also makes sense. So that was a nice feedback. I mean, how can I make it stand out without using text graphics?
Have anybody ever heard of the African American Dance Company before this class here at IU? Okay. This is great because most of y'all are the audience that we're seeking to communicate this message to and share more about. The African American Dance Company was founded in 1974 under Dr. Herman C. Hudson, whose vision is the reason why we have so much here to serve Black African American students here at IU. And the African American Dance Company is one aspect of that huge vision that now has taken over IU by storm. So we're seeking to profile the company itself, not just individual stories and voices, but collectively through a variety of mediums to engage them and also engage the audience and immerse them in their world. We seek to tell their story from their perspective.
I'm telling a story of this person, knowing the dance company through this character. The person is making a film on the dance company. I'm making a film on that film. So it's kind of a film capturing how the film process is done. But one of the challenges, I was not getting the story arc when I was filming. So I had to change my plan. That worked or not, I don't know. That is yet to be decided. But I felt like that let's go to the history of it. African American Dance Company has a huge history that I didn't know earlier. My focus was I'll film a film within a film. The person is making a film on the dance company, and I'll just follow the person through the cinema verite style, like an observation one. But also I interview the person. So before coming to the history, just one more thing that I wanted to share. So I have all the events footages, but I realized when I was filming it, definitely I have interviews as well. I found some interesting assets when I was on the process of it. And the interesting asset is there is a history of dance that is not only dance. During the slavery period, dance was used as a code language. When people used to send dogs to find slaves, then the way they used to hide, the way they used to send messages among themselves through various artistic techniques and musical approaches. And that's a very intriguing idea that I felt interested in, and I dived deep. And then I found out, literally before the Second World War, or even after that, there are various stories on all those kind of stuffs. And not only that, if I have a picture of it here, even there are various art forms, sculpture, fine arts, painting forms that use dance movements and musical notations of Black history. So that idea I got later on. It was not part of the pre-production and first primary plan. So the way it works, if your story doesn't work, my suggestion would be open to the story and study more, do more research. That helps sometimes. The next class would be Chronicle of a Summer. You will have a viewing guide. If it's not uploaded yet, we'll double check. And it's a very interesting film. It's a cinema verite style and one of my favorites. We'll talk about it.